So I'm Chip Coleman. I'm a nutritional therapy consultant here at Body Dynamics. I've been doing that for a few years now. And one of the things I found is that there's a lot of information out there in terms of what constitutes good nutrition, what constitutes a good diet, what constitutes good health. And I like to help people I like to help guide people through the plethora of information that's out there. Some of it is good, some of it is bad, some of it contradicts each other. So again, looking at the best information we have, the best, most recent information we have, and that's where we're going to start today. So again, as I mentioned, we're looking at what it means to eat well, move well, and how to do that while we're at home. Okay, so today our objectives are to talk about, again, a 30,000-foot overview of nutrition for optimal health. What does good, optimal nutrition look like? And then eating foods or behaving in ways that maximize your immune function. There are foods that help with immune functions. There are foods that do not help with immune function. And alongside that, there are things that you can do, ways that we can behave, things that can really impact how well your body functions, specifically your immune system. Okay, so we're going to talk about some of that as well. Again, this is by no means exhaustive, but I'm looking at just some really basic things we can do to maximize, again, the health and well-being that we should have. We're going to have a question and answer session at the end. So if you have questions, there is a a question and answer function. And we'll be doing that to kind of sort through some of the questions in case there's a lot of overlap, so that we can get through all of this and be very efficient about it. All right. So again, what's the best case scenario for nutrition? And again, I have my notes here, so don't set if I look at my notes here. So again, when we look at good nutrition, you're looking at things that are going to give you optimal function, that are going to minimize the effects of any chronic disease you may be suffering from, that maybe even can turn back some of the effects of that chronic disease, things that are going to increase your energy, increase your overall sense of well-being. All right. So the tagline for this webinar was, is it diet or is it nutrition? It's kind of a trick question because again, if you have a good diet, and I want you to think of a diet as a noun, not a verb, not something you do for a short time, but something that you establish that you, again, maximize your nutrition and maximize your health. If you have that good diet, you should be getting proper nutrition. I'm not a huge fan of supplements, but sometimes they are in order. But in my mind, if you're eating a good, well-balanced diet year-round, you should be getting proper nutrition. And again, if your body's not getting enough of a particular nutrient, you might need to either supplement with that, or you might need to change your diet just a little bit, tweak it to kind of get sources of food that are going to give you that particular nutrient. But as a starting off point, when we look at macronutrients, and those are not necessarily the most important things that we eat, but they're just the most kind of common in our bodies. We look at carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. There are micronutrients, and those are vitamins and minerals. And those are things that, again, are important to us by all means, but they're just not as common in our bodies. And the other one is water, and we'll talk about water as well in a second. So when we look at our macronutrients, a good jumping off point for kind of maximizing your nutrition is starting with about a 40% of your diet. Again, not the noun, not the verb, 40% of your diet being carbohydrates, 30% being fats, and 30% being protein. When I look at people's food journals, when I look at people's diets, what they're eating kind of on a regular basis, one of the things I find is that people are eating a lot more carbohydrates than they think they are, and probably not getting a lot of protein, enough protein. As we age, I'm not sure why this is, but people tend to eat less protein, and then people sort of lose muscle mass and they blame it on aging. But the reality is probably you're not eating enough protein to keep that muscle mass, and we're probably not doing enough resistance training to keep that muscle mass as well. So again, looking at that as a jumping off point, if you're incredibly active, if you're say a runner or a bicyclist and you're doing these century, 100-mile bike rides, you might need more carbohydrates to get through your training and get through those races and such. But again, when we look at carbohydrates, what do carbohydrates do? Why are they important? They are a quick source of fuel for the muscles. Your brain loves carbohydrates for energy. They help with the regulation of protein and fat. Again, fat and protein also help regulate the other two macronutrients there. So that's why the balance there is very important. Provide a good source of fiber, which we're going to get to later when we start to talk about gut health, because fiber is incredibly important when it comes to gut health, as well as weight regulation. It helps keep you regular as well. Some if we break up those carbohydrates into two types, there are complex carbohydrates and simple carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates tend to provide more vitamins, energy, minerals, and fiber that help you, as I mentioned before. And again, if you're trying to lose weight or you're dealing with blood sugar issues, you might need to limit your consumption of the simple carbohydrates, the starchy things such as potatoes, squash, rice, that sort of thing. Those are what I would call, some of those are what I would call simple carbohydrates, because again, they have a quick source of energy for your body, but it's a little too simple. Your body breaks it down really quickly. You get a lot of glucose in your blood system and a blood sugar spike, which will give you a bunch of energy, but then you'll crash later. In terms of your energy levels. So again, you want to be careful with your carbohydrates, especially if you're trying to, again, regulate your body in terms of blood sugar or weight or energy even. When we talk about fats, fats are also important because fats provide your body with a good source of long burning fuel. Again, people tend to demonize fats and say fats are bad. I'm on a low fat diet, and that isn't necessarily good, especially when we're looking at maximizing your immune health, because again, some of the fats that you eat are going to be used to help your body fight infection, to help your body stay energized. Again, vitamins A, D, E, and K are all fat soluble vitamins, and you need fat in your body to absorb them. Fat also provides a source of lining for the organs in your joints and such. It also makes food just taste good. When we look at protein, again, protein is also very important. As I mentioned before, it helps keep your lean muscle mass kind of high. It also helps regulate the fat and the carbohydrate absorption. Proteins are also very important in immune function in that they are used for antibody production. They're used for enzyme production. One of the things that also proteins are used for are neurotransmitters. So if you're kind of in a funky or a sad mood these days, if you're not getting a well-balanced amino acid profile, that could be playing into that as well. And this is not a very popular opinion sometimes, but I find that if you're eating a vegan diet and not getting any animal protein whatsoever, you're probably going to be short in one of those amino acids, which could play into your health and well-being long term. So keep that in mind. I'm not saying you have to eat a piece of steak, but maybe an egg, maybe some butter, maybe some cheese, something along those lines to get a full complement of your amino acids. Again, proteins are very important in that regard. And I find, again, as I look at food journals, that people are lacking in protein, enough protein. All right, hydration. You want to make sure you're getting enough hydration, again, to regulate your body temperature, to help all these nutrients that you're going to be eating in your fantastic diet, to get them around your system. Hydration is also important in terms of flushing toxins, in terms of removing waste, lubricating your joints, all the things we all know about. But that we sometimes don't get enough of, especially in terms of hydration. So again, the general formula is you take your weight in pounds, you divide that in half, and that's the amount, the ounces of water you should be drinking a day. Fruit juice doesn't count because fruit juice is high in sugar, and sugar is, again, a simple carbohydrate, and that will deplete your body of both water as well as a lot of vitamins and minerals. So if you're going to have some fruit juice, I would say dilute it with just some simple, just filtered water, and you can kind of have that, and you'll get a decent, again, some vitamins and minerals from the fruit juice. I'm specifically thinking about citrus juice, but you won't also do the damage that will be caused by not getting enough hydration. Green tea is another good way to get hydration. People think tea doesn't count. If it's a highly caffeinated tea, I wouldn't say go for it, but if it's a decaf tea, you could consider that as part of your hydration for the day. When you're drinking water, try to stay away from either reverse osmosis or distilled water. Those are devoid of any other vitamins or minerals or electrolytes, and then your body will leach out some of the electrolytes you have in your system, and you might find yourself cramping. Even though you're drinking enough water, you may have depleted yourself of some of the vitamins and minerals that'll help with that. All right, when we talk about high quality food, what do I mean? I mean food that is in its whole, most natural form. The American diet is pretty high in processed foods. It's high in foods that tend to have a lot of extra additives in them. Things maybe like antibiotics, preservatives, as I mentioned. All these things your body has to process, and this is extra work for your body to do. And right now, in this day and age, we don't need our bodies doing extra work because we're just trying to stay as healthy as possible. So when you look at your food, think about things that will rot. I always say your food should go bad. If it can stay on the shelf for months at a time, I would question it highly. You want to have food, again, that is going to be whole, that is going to be nutritious. And if it's got a lot of preservatives in it, they probably had to strip out a lot of that nutrition to get those preservatives in there. It's also probably higher in a lot of questionable fats and sugar, just plain old sugar, which we do not need. All right. When we think about proper nutrition and diet, you can have the best diet in the world, but if you're not digesting it, it's not doing you any good. So, some things to think about when we think about digestion, how much you're eating. Are you overloading your system with your meals? I'm not saying eat small meals, but make sure that when you eat, you're chewing your food well, you're digesting it well. It starts in your mouth, actually, it starts in your brain. Then your mouth starts chewing your food up, and then your stomach gets to it. And then it goes into your small and large intestine. But if you're not in a relaxed state, your body's not going to produce enough stomach acid to digest your food. If you're really scarfing down your food quickly, again, you haven't broken it down in your mouth enough. And then when it gets through the rest of your system, you're not going to digest it. And it's also going to cause a little bit more trouble in the rest of your system because, again, your lower part of your digestive system is not designed to break up large particles of food. So keep that in mind when you're eating, because hello, this is a lunch and learn. Hopefully everybody's enjoying their lunch and actually tasting it. If you don't really remember what you ate, you probably scarfed it down too quickly. All right. And again, as we look at proper nutrition, again, as I mentioned before, a lot of it can be used to manage or minimize the effects of chronic illnesses. I talked about blood sugar issues. If you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, what you all know very well, what you can eat or what you eat can very much affect your health and well-being. So again, if you can eat well, eat a high fiber diet, low in those simple carbs, that'll definitely help with something like managing diabetes. All right. So that's kind of the overall view of kind of what proper nutrition should look like. All right. When we look at immune function, we're trying to kick COVID-19 to the curb. All right. So that if you come in contact with it, you are of that part of the population that maybe doesn't even know they got sick or maybe is a little ill and then kind of rebounds. That's what we're after here. So we're looking at immune function and foods that we can use to maximize your immune function. All right, again, I gave a presentation a few months ago and it was about inflammation, and I stole this slide because it was a good one because it's really relevant. When it comes to immune function, it's all about your gut. 70%, I saw somewhere between 60% to 80%, so I rounded down to the middle. 70% of your immune system is in your gut. So if your gut is not healthy, bam, all diseases begin in the gut. So if your gut is not functioning well, if your gut is not in a good place, you're going to be much more challenged to fight off a lot of other issues. Green tea, by the way. When you look at your gut, there are good bacteria in your gut, there are bad bacteria in your gut. You really want to balance that out so that the tips of the good bacteria are outweighing the bad gut bacteria. And you can eat foods that promote that. When we look at a high fiber diet, and I looked at this slide after I wrote it, and I was thinking about my notes. And a high fiber diet is basically a diet that's high in prebiotic foods. Those are foods that are going to feed the good gut bacteria. So when we think about those kind of foods, some good ones that you can think about that you might want to try: dandelion greens, Jerusalem artichokes, leeks, asparagus, seaweed. All these things feed the good gut bacteria. Chia seeds, that sort of thing. What am I thinking of? Flax seeds. All those sorts of high fiber foods that really feed the good gut bacteria. Okra is another good one. You want to stock your diet full of these foods. Again, they'll make you feel fuller. They'll help with digestion. Eat them well, but eat them often. When you look at fermented foods, those are your probiotic foods. Those are foods that are high in the good gut bacteria. Things like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, one of my favorites, kombucha. Those are all foods that can help repopulate that good gut bacteria to help keep your gut nice and strong and healthy. Because again, when your gut is functioning well, you'll feel better, you'll look better, you'll function better, and then again, your immune system will be functioning at its best. All right. Bone broth is one of those things you can do to help with gut healing. Bone broth, cabbage juice, they both, bone broth is high in collagen, high in vitamins and minerals, high in things that kind of calm the gut down and help it repair itself. So again, if you want I believe I've sent out a bone broth recipe, but it's in my cookbook. There's a plug for my stuff. But you can look at that bone broth and add it to, you can either have it by itself, you can use it to make soups, stews, anything you can think of where you would use either water or stock. You can use bone broth and just get an extra kick of something good for your system. Again, gut bacteria, very important. So when we look at boosting immune function, overall, you want to look at those high quality proteins. And when I say high quality proteins, I mean proteins that are high with a good complement of amino acids, high quality fats. And here's where you want to think about foods that may be high, a little higher in omega-3 fatty acids. Those are going to be the ones that help your body with inflammation. A lot of those come from the sea, things like mackerel, salmon, cod, oysters, sardines, anchovies. I know people are like, but if you're worried about heavy metal, start with the smaller ones, things like the sardines, maybe the smaller anchovies. And then you'll get that good omega-3 fatty acid profile without maybe as much as the questionable high heavy metal content. Again, if you get fresh caught seafood versus farmed, I think that's a little better off for you. Flavonoids, what are those? Those are compounds in fruits and vegetables mainly that help boost your immune function. As I mentioned, green tea, high in those flavonoids that help with immune function as well as weight loss, if that's a concern of yours. Most veggies, fruits, olive oil, and coconut oil are also high in flavonoids that help boost immune function. So again, if you're concerned about your immune system, think about the fats we talked about, think about the proteins that I was talking about, and again, those flavonoids and a lot of fruits and vegetables will help with that. In terms of not helping your immune system, high and low simple carbohydrates. So things like sugar, things like just plain white rice, things like white bread, eating a lot of carbohydrates just in general, eating or drinking a lot of alcohol. Those will all impair your immune function. They'll also impair your digestive function. So you want to keep that in mind as well. The other thing that'll help or that'll kind of suppress good digestion, as I mentioned, eating in a stressful state, eating in a rush state, also obviously having or taking acid blockers that will help lower your your stomach acid, but it'll also impede good digestion. So you want to keep all those in mind as you're looking at, the things you're doing with your life in terms of helping yourself. You also want to make sure that you're not helping yourself in one way and hurting yourself in another way. All right. So then we get to lifestyle interventions, things that we can do, not necessarily eat, but things that we can do that will definitely impact your overall health and well-being. One of the things we talk about is reducing stress, and that in turn will boost your immune system. I have Bob Ross over there because he always is very relaxing, sometimes a little too relaxing. But when you look at how your body functions under stress, it basically is trying to escape whatever that particular crisis is. So it's not going to worry about healing yourself. It's not going to worry about fighting off a bug. It's thinking that you are in some really dire situation that needs to be avoided. So that's going to take all its energy and put your energy there, not to things that are going to help you heal. One of the simplest things you can do is get adequate sleep. That'll give your body a chance to recharge, to repair, to just kind of get all the toxins or some of the toxins out of your system. And a good guideline for sleep is that you shouldn't need an alarm clock to wake up. One of the things that we talk about is, what is the amount of sleep someone should get? As you're younger, you might need closer to 9-10 hours of sleep. As you get a little older, you might need a little less, but people who are getting by on like 5 or 6 hours of sleep, my guess is that's probably not sufficient for your overall health and well-being. Things that you can do to help with that is to kind of keep to a regular sleep schedule. So try to keep to the same time within maybe a half an hour of going to bed, as well as waking up, whether it's the week or the weekend. Try not to reduce screen time to a minimum before you go to sleep. A couple of hours before you sleep, you should probably cut out all screens, computers, or if you have blue light blocking glasses or a screen on your computer or phone or tablet or whatever you're using, that can help, because that will stimulate the part of your brain that is not going to help you go to sleep very easily. There's a very melatonin and serotonin, I always mix it up, sleep cycle your body needs. So you want to make sure you don't disturb that. Getting regular exercise will definitely help with your immune system. One of my clients sent me last week an article. I think there's a researcher down somewhere in Virginia who's doing research about how cardiovascular exercise helps with your body producing a particular compound that helps keep your lungs healthy. So that can be very healthy very important, sorry, as we're working through this particular time we're living in. Exercise also just in general will help you sleep well. Again, if you're tired, you're more likely to go to sleep. It makes your brain kind of wind down a little bit. Some of the other things that'll help your body do that are meditation and yoga. Deep breathing, relaxed moving, that will help kind of bring your, kind of calm your system down so that, again, you can eat your food, you can go to bed, you can be nice and relaxed when you need to be, and when you need to be a little more amped up, you can be that as well. But you shouldn't be always up here in a kind of a sympathetic state. You need to have a little ebb and flow to your body so that your body can, again, repair itself. One of the things I found is that a lot of my clients who garden, taking it back to, fruits and vegetables, if you grow your own fruits and vegetables, you know what's in them, you know what's been put in them, you're much better off. Obviously, everybody does not have that option, but if you garden, even if it's for fruits, vegetables, flowers, I found that people actually exercise a lot more in their gardens than they do when they're with me. It's kind of interesting because, again, it's a task that you're trying to get done. So you're going to work out in your garden, you're going to plant those tomatoes, or you're going to harvest your tomatoes or whatever, and you'll do that for a couple of hours. And if I asked you to stay on the elliptical for a couple of hours, you'd look at me like I was crazy, but people do it without thinking about it. But again, that's a form of exercise that might not necessarily pop into your head. It's also something that can relax you. Crafts and hobbies, you could paint, you could do craft work, knitting. Everybody's taking up knitting these days, crocheting. Things, painting, music, something that just kind of takes your mind off of things and helps your immune system kind of settle down. Again, these are all things that you can do to help your body, again, stay healthy, to boost your immune function, to keep you kind of moving well as we're dealing with all the things we're dealing with. And now we will get to the question and answer session. So I'm going to stop my screen here and go back to me here. All right, so let's see what we have. All right, so a question for seniors: isn't there a need for even more protein? And the answer is yes, and I think the answer kind of comes down to the fact that as seniors, as we age, people tend to eat less protein. So I don't think it's necessarily more protein, but you probably need to eat more than you're actually eating. A general guideline is you take your body weight in kilograms, and everybody has a kilogram scale, and you want to have 1 gram for each kilogram of your body weight of protein per day. So if you weigh 52 kilograms, you need to get at least 52 grams of protein. I read even somewhere that, people should start at around about 70 grams of protein during the day, just again, get that muscle mass back up. Because again, that's one of the challenges that happens to people. Sorry, I was reading another question. To people as we age, because again, you don't eat enough protein. And my advice for people when you're eating protein is to have it directly after your workout. So when you're doing resistance training, when you're doing even cardiovascular training, have your protein afterwards, because again, that's when your muscles have been broken down and you'll give them the fuel to get stronger again, so that you'll actually incorporate it into your system. Hopefully that helped. All right, so yes, protein, you want to have more, probably more than you think you do, than you are eating, sorry. And again, stick to that guideline. Again, 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. I would say bump it up to 1, maybe 2 grams if you're trying to put on, or 1.5, maybe 2 grams if you're trying to put on some muscle mass. All right, next question. Kombucha typically has too much sugar. That is true, but one of the things you can do is find a lower sugar kombucha, depending on the brand you're looking at. Again, it might have more sugar, it might have less. But again, if you want to make your own, you can certainly do that. I've never done it because it just seems a little too daunting for me, but I know people who do. And you can definitely, if you're making anything yourself, you can control it. That's why I'm always a big proponent of making your own food. So if you make it yourself, you know what's in it. So if you want to make your own kombucha, there are recipes online. Feel free to help or knock yourself out and try one out. But again, it doesn't necessarily have to be kombucha. Like I said, you could do other fermented foods. You can do kimchi. You can do sauerkraut. Play around with stuff. Try something you haven't tried before. You might find something you really, really enjoy. All right. And then someone asked me where I'm getting my food will rot while still maintaining a quarantine. Haha. So yes, we're supposed to highly limit our trips to the grocery store. So highly limit does not mean you don't ever go to the grocery store. And there are ways around that. You can have your food delivered to you. There are a lot of CSAs, I think even some farmers markets, supermarkets that will shop for you. And you can go and get your food have your food, sorry, delivered to you. So you can get a fresh batch of vegetables, each week. And then thinking about food that will rot, it doesn't necessarily have to be fresh fruits and vegetables. I'm thinking of things like lentils, legumes, things that you can have that are very shelf stable for a very long time that are also very high in nutrition in terms of vitamins and minerals and protein and fiber. One of my favorites is chickpeas. If you have chickpeas on the shelf, you can soak them overnight, you can cook them, add your bone broth, and there you go. And add some vegetables in, maybe add in some protein, and you've got a wonderful soup or stew right there. From things that you've had in your shelf or on your shelf, maybe in the freezer. And it's incorporated a lot of good, nutritious food into one meal. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something that will rot immediately, but definitely try to get your fresh fruits and vegetables as much as you can. All right. I think that is pretty much all the questions we have. Oh, someone asked if there are good fats and bad fats. Yes, there are. I would say bad fats are fats that are fried. If you're cooking, when you're cooking with fat, especially if you're sauteing anything, it shouldn't burn, it shouldn't smoke. All right. That's something that, again, if you change the molecular structure of something, of the fat in particular, by heating it up too much, you're going to incorporate that changed molecular structure into your body, and it could wreak havoc there. So again, bad fats, I would stay away from anything that's highly processed. You want to stick with something that's extra virgin, cold pressed, cold pressed, something along those, things that are, again, minimally touched by human hands. All right. So, stress eating, that's a question that has come up. So that's one of the things I've been reading about is people doing all this, what are people stress baking? What are people stress cooking? How are people stress eating? I would say use those tactics that I talked about before, going out into your garden, painting, drawing, doing some yoga, exercising to kind of help you with stress versus reaching into your pantry or into your refrigerator to manage your stress. I know it's all so tempting. But again, a little of that goes a long way. So you're managing your stress by eating, but maybe you're eating something that's not so good, which is then going to stress your system some more. So again, keep the stress eating to a minimum. Again, since we're all kind of stuck at home, if you don't have it in your home, it's kind of hard to stress eat it, right? So again, think about stuff as you're buying things in the supermarket. Let's see, coconut oil. I would say coconut oil, if it is cold pressed, extra virgin, minimally processed, I'd say you can eat it I wouldn't say you can eat it without concern if you have cholesterol issues, because it is a highly saturated fat, but it's something that you can incorporate from time to time. I like to mix my oil. So if I'm using a saturated fat, I'll put in a little bit of olive oil to kind of thin it out a little bit, just as I'm sauteing something. For instance, this morning I scrambled some eggs with some vegetables, and I started the vegetables in some olive oil, but then I added in a little butter before I scrambled the eggs. So you can kind of mix around with that. Again, coconut oil should have a strong flavor. So you might want to, limit that to, an occasional, curry or something like that, where it's going to make sense, where you're going to have that coconut flavor. But again, if you have cholesterol issues, you might want to ease up on the coconut oil. Go for more of the omega-6 oils, your flaxseed oils. Don't heat those too much, your olive oils, things like that. Alrighty, I think that's pretty much everything. Let me see if there's any more questions. Oh, yes. All right. Talk more about sources for the full range of amino acids that are desirable. Sorry. So in terms of full ranges of amino acids, one of the ones that doesn't get incorporated enough if you're not eating animal protein is lysine. And that's very important for immune health. So again, if you're getting proteins from plants, if you're getting proteins from animals, you're getting a complete range of amino acids there. So again, it's not that you need to only eat one or only eat the other. My big advice to people when you're thinking about your diet is have a full range of foods. Try not to eat the same meal 2 days in a row or 2 meals in a row. Get a lot of other, sources of your food. So if you're eating protein, don't just think fish. If you like red meat, have red meat every now and again, have some chicken, have some legume protein, have some vegetable protein, all of it. You'll cover all your bases and then you won't have to worry about it too much. All right. And somebody asked a question. Okay, if you're having 2,000 calorie diet, calorie a day diet, 30% of that is 600 calories, 150 grams of protein. Is that too much? Not at all. If you're eating that much food, and that's a good amount of food to eat, that makes sense to me. And again, if you think of 50 grams of protein, that's about 150 grams of protein, that's about 50 grams per meal. It doesn't all have to be, like I said, in that 4-ounce piece of chicken or 4-ounce piece of steak. You can eat that. If you have a little cheese, there's some protein there. If there's protein in everything, it's just not tons of protein. If you had something like hummus as a snack, that's got a ton of protein in it, and there's some chickpeas. And then someone mentioned that there's a good chickpea recipe in the post from a few days ago. Everybody check it out. But again, protein is, again, one of those things that, again, you're probably not getting enough. I know I don't get enough sometimes. And so it's also going to help you feel a little fuller because, again, protein, it's not that it's heavy, but protein is one of those things that's your body takes a little longer to digest it. Carbs, boom, done in a minute. All right, what other oils should be avoided? So I would say stay away from canola oil. That is highly processed. Things that like, soybean oil. One of the things that happens with soy is, again, you're never really sure, unless it says it on the label. Sometimes they're pretty good about it. If it's an organic soybean, and again, soy is one of those crops that is, it's one of the, I think it's the second largest crop in this country after corn. And so a lot of it is not necessarily the best quality soy. So again, you're looking at soy, you're getting it in the soybean oil. If it says vegetable oil, chances are it probably has soybean oil in it. If you're eating any processed foods in a box, probably has soy in it, either as a soybean oil or a soy protein isolate. Check your energy bars or protein bars. Those probably have a lot of soy in them. And the only issue I have with soy is that it mimics estrogen in your body, again, other than the fact that it's probably not organic and it might be genetically modified, which is, again, debatable. But if you're getting a lot of soy in your diet, it will mimic estrogen. And if there's any concern with breast cancer for women, or kind of weight gain for men or muscle building for men, or women if you're concerned about that, too much soy might mimic estrogen. It can throw off your endocrine system in a not so great way. All right, so that's my issue with soybean oil. But other oils you might want to avoid, again, I would say corn oil. Again, I mentioned canola oil. Try to keep your oils, again, as healthy as possible. Again, a good mix of them, like I said, good healthy butter, grass-fed cow butter, coconut oil, that sort of thing. And a nice, if you're going to have a lighter oil like a walnut oil or an avocado oil, keep those in cool, dark places because they will go rancid pretty quickly out in the sun, out in the light. And you want to have them as long as possible. All right, what do I think about low sugar protein drinks? Again, depending on the protein, sure. I haven't done it in a while, but when I've done a protein drink, I'll make it myself. I'll make myself a little protein smoothie, and I'll get the protein powder, and I'll get some either juice or a fruit or some yogurt, and make my protein powder or protein smoothie that way. Because again, I question a lot of stuff that's on the shelves just because. And if you can do it yourself, especially now we all have a little more free time at home, take this time to test something out, try something new that you haven't done before. All right. All right, so somebody's tried the fasting mimicking diet for 5 days and great results in doable. About 750 to 900 calories daily, sorry. Is this advisable during coronavirus time? That is an excellent question because again, when you're fasting, you are challenging your system. And I would say, I'm trying to remember, I think it's 900 calories is kind of the threshold. I think the World Health Organization says that under 900 calories a day is malnourishment. So again, you might want to think about that, especially during this time, during this coronavirus time. Maybe now's not the time to do the fasting that you're thinking about. Maybe it's time just to kind of keep everything slow and steady, and maybe think about that later once we're through all of this. But again, fasting will help you lose weight, and it will kind of tap into your fat stores. But again, it's going to stress your system. So you got to, pick your stressors here. Again, that's my little 10 cents about that one. All right, bone health and calcium sources. So bone health and calcium sources. All right, I talked about what they called supplements very briefly. But one of the things that interests me most about bone health and calcium is that, you know, there's a lot of calcium fortified foods, cereals, breads, milk, yogurt, everything has got calcium fortified, this, that, and the other. And yet we're still having issues with osteoporosis and osteopenia. So again, calcium is a very interesting thing because calcium takes a lot of cofactors to get into your system. And so I think what's happening is a lot of people, as I mentioned before, are eating these high calcium diets, all these foods, and it's not being absorbed into your system and you're just flushing it down the toilet. So one of the things you can think about is the cofactors that go into absorbing calcium. Vitamin D is one of them. So if you are wearing a lot of sunblock all the time, your body's not manufacturing or absorbing that vitamin D. And as I mentioned before, if you're on a low-fat diet, your body's not going to be able to absorb that vitamin D as well. So you need vitamin D, you need sunlight, you need calcium, you need hydration, you need sufficient stomach acid to absorb that calcium into your system. So if all of those things aren't in place, so I'm just picturing somebody who maybe is on a low-fat diet, wears a lot of sunblock, has a high-stress job, runs to and fro, you're taking all the calcium in the world and your body probably is not absorbing it, and you're running the risk of again, running into osteoporosis or osteopenia later. So when you look at bone health, you can't just parse out that one little aspect. And I would say that probably goes for a lot of the vitamins and minerals that we eat. They're all kind of, you know, in our foods, they're kind of next to one another. So you need both of them to help them both work along. And if you kind of pull one part and try to absorb that, it might not work as well as expected. So again, calcium is, again, one of those things in terms of bone health that, you know, there's a lot of other factors that go along with it. So you can't just look at the calcium, you got to look at, you know, activity. Again, go out into the sun. I'm not saying go out and get sunburnt, but again, 15 minutes in the sun when the sun is at the appropriate levels, which is probably what have we, I don't think we've gone through. Yeah, we have. So the sun is probably high enough now that if you went outside pretty much right now for about 10, 15 minutes without sun protection on, you would do enough to, again, help your body create enough vitamin D to help your body absorb calcium to help yourself along. Again, you don't need to go out and sit and fry for hours. I'm not saying that, but again, it's about picking your poisons, you know, stressing your body enough to keep it healthy, because you do need to stress your body to make it healthy, but you don't want to overstress it. By the way, I didn't talk about that before, but in terms of cardiovascular work, kind of like we talked about with the fasting, it's good, but maybe not right now. In terms of cardiovascular work, this is not the time to start training for your triathlon maybe and really stressing your body and going for really hard runs or bike rides or swims every day. Because again, too much stress in your body is gonna lower your immune function. We're trying to keep that immune function high-ish. All right. Last question. Somebody asked to tell me about the cookbook. So last year I did a cookbook that we were selling here at Body Dynamics, and it had some simple recipes, some simple things that you can do. And it's kind of funny because, again, one of the first recipes was for bone broth, and the second one I remember was a kimchi soup. And those are some things that we mentioned today that could help you stay nice and strong and healthy. And again, we're selling it here. If you want, you can contact the front desk and they'll be more than happy to tell you how we can get you a copy. But yeah, it has 12 recipes in it. And again, I had one for each month, trying to kind of keep it thematic throughout the year. Some of the ones in the summer had more what's it called, dessert recipes and such, and some of the ones in the fall were a little more appropriate for the holidays. But again, just some foods that you can eat that I thought would be a nice little range of foods. I remember there was an oyster recipe in there. We talked about how oysters are good for you. Just some foods that you can eat throughout the year to give you like a little jumping off point about some foods that will help you stay healthy and strong and hopefully nice and helpful. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for your questions. A lot of good questions. I always get such good questions from you guys. And again, if you have any questions or if you want to schedule a consultation with me or just shoot me a quick email, if it's a really quick question, I'll answer that. And if you don't have my email, just email the front desk and they'll be more than happy to send it to you. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon. And since it's nice and sunny, and if you can, socially distance, go out and go for a little walk after lunch. All right. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.